Henrik Ibsen feels somewhat indisposed after yet another evening with his friends in the afterlife. Suddenly, he alights from immortality and calls for his heavenly coachman and carriage.
Coachman.
Which naturally every immortal is equipped with, and travels north over the skies.
To Gudbrandsdalen. I sense there is something going on there that I don't understand. I roamed that area once asking for local tales and legends. Let me see, how old was I? 33? About that. Did I find anything in Fron? A lovely village, but there were hardly any living tales left. But there was a reputed reindeer hunter there. I must be off and see what they have done with him. If the truth be known, I took a fascination for him while I lived in Italy for a year.
And the heavenly ride speeds northwards, way beyond Lake Mjøsa.
A signpost? What on earth? Would you believe it? It says Peer Gynt Road. Well, move on, my dear coachman. And here? The Peer Gynt House? And the Peer Gynt Festival? What is this supposed to mean? Have they turned the local hunter into something like a member of Parliament? This is incredible. The Peer Gynt shopping centre. It's way beyond belief. Coachman, bring me the local printer, Aslaksen. These newsmen know all the secrets and what's going on here too. Oh, here we are. The local newspaper Dølen. And you are editor Aslaksen?
My name?
Aslaksen. All editors are called that. Tell me, what Peer Gynt craze has descended on these communities?
It's an honour to receive a visit by Ibsen himself.
Spare me your niceties. Tell me what's going on around here.
Well, you once wrote a letter to your publisher about Peer Gynt, adding that, if it interests you, Peer Gynt is a real person who once lived in the Gudbrandsdalen Valley.
My good man, don't quote me to my face. But does this mean that my Peer Gynt has bombarded this beautiful landscape by his omnipresence?
Oh yes. In a way we celebrate the meeting between the local pair and your world-famous character Peer, the one you created, spelt with 2 E's.
Peer with 2 E's was not my idea. It was Asbjørnsen's. But what are all these hectic Peer Gynt activities good for? Is this the way people make money around here these days?
Rather the contrary. Dedicated local people started the whole thing to celebrate your 100th birthday.
Let me see. In my timeless existence, I simply lose track. It must have been in 1928?
At that time, people around here agreed that they had to bring Peer Gynt home and arrange a festival based on your play. Many years went by with next to no activity, until the 100th year celebration of the poem Peer Gynt in 1967. They started a festival, but it was a struggle from one year to the next. In 1989 it took off in all seriousness. A few bright people got the idea of staging all of Peer Gynt on the shore of Lake Gålå, west in the valley, with Edvard Grieg's music and all.
Grieg was in on it? That rascal? He didn't like my dramatic poem and wrote what he called cowpat music to go with it. Worst of all, those 2 sweets he had scribbled down gave him world fame.
But the first performance of Peer Gynt in Christiania was a formidable success.
Are you saying they put up my Peer Gynt at Lake Gålå once every summer in front of some 80 people?
Oh no, far from it. In front of over 2,000 people every night during the festival in early August, every year.
Well, really. You'll have to show me this Lake Gålå, my dear editor Aslaksen. Find a seat in my heavenly carriage and we'll set off for the mountains. Let me tell you something. When I wrote Peer Gynt in Italy, in the course of 9 months, mind you, I felt like a rearing stallion. I searched my innermost thoughts in places that hurt the most and ruthlessly disclosed family secrets in order to paint a picture of life on the well-heeled Jon Gynt's farm, while I modelled Mother Åsa on my own mother, although with some creative exaggeration. So, this is Lake Gålå, as you call it?
Yes. And over there is the amphitheater.
Well, would you believe it?
May I ask a question?
Of course. But let me remind you that in my profession, I raise the questions. I don't provide the answers.
What did you hope to achieve by writing Peer Gynt?
So here is where they perform my dramatic poem. And over there, in the distance, Rondon, the well-known peak, isn't it?
But what do you want to tell us in Peer Gynt?
An exceptionally foolish question. Just what one would expect from an editor. Are you in fact asking for an interview?
That would have been great.
I don't give interviews, but this place has put me in a divinely good mood, so I'll make an exception. You have a pen and ink ready at hand, I suppose?
To go back then, Mr. Ibsen, what did you want your play to teach us?
My dear editor Aslaksen.
My name is...
Aslaksen. All my editors are called Aslaksen. So tell me, how did these clever local people hit on the idea of staging Peer Gynt on the shores of this beautiful lake? Once you decided to bring him out into the open air, wouldn't it have been better to transpose him to the other side of the main valley? Towards Rondon? That's where the renowned reindeer hunter roamed, if I remember correctly.
There was no electricity there.
Pardon?
Electricity?
Hardly a problem for a reindeer hunter.
Well, no, but they needed it for the theatre production. You need electricity to produce sound and light and other things. And here, by Lake Gålå, there was a ski lift. There are cabins, hotels, good roads and space for parking, if Mr. Ibsen understands.
I died in 1906, Aslaksen, so I know full well what an automobile is.
Well, in 1989, the first year, things were quite simple. The cows grazed on the staging ground, dropping their pats before the performance. If Ibsen excuses this crude... and the brave organisers borrowed breeze blocks to put boards on for the audience to sit. Well, they were stolen. Rain was pouring down. By normal standards, the show should have been a flop, but it was a success. Over the years, the theatre has been developed into an impressive amphitheater, with a seating capacity of more than 2,000 people. And the sun sets behind Valsfjell mountain just as Mother Åsa dies. That is, when it's not raining.
The audience goes home when it's raining, I suppose?
No, there are those who claim that the performance is even better in rough weather. The audience and the actors are brought closer together, so to speak. And all the volunteers...
I beg your pardon? Volunteers?
Amateur actors, then. But what's special about this performance at Gålå is that in its cast of some 100 people, most are volunteers. That is, people who are not professional actors and don't get paid to perform.
What on earth do these people do on the stage?
The Wedding at Hagestar, The Trolls and the Mountain King, The Lunatic Asylum in Cairo. Think of those scenes.
Well, I must say, in my younger years, I was a manager at Ole Bulls Theatre in Bergen and ushered people on and off the stage, but 100. That takes a lot of practice, I guess.
Yes, they start about a month before the opening show and keep on going, with sweat running down their backs.
And receive solid rounds of applause every evening. That helps a lot, I would think. Just a small question, Mr. Aslaksen, in all modesty. Does anybody ever applaud me? I just want to remind you, my good editor Aslaksen, that I am present here on the stage at Gålå every evening, and I deserve some applause.
Oh, you get that, Dr. Ibsen. Your dramatic poem reaches into the hearts of people.
Well, that's good to hear. You know what that young radical rebel Arne Gårborg wrote about Peer Gynt? From time to time, he wrote, Ibsen sits there full of disdain, even revulsion against the lack of virtue that transpires from his writings. To give vent to his disgust, he becomes scornful and derisive. Are you saying that thousands of people who come to Gålå feel the targets of my derision?
Not at all. They stand up and give big rounds of applause after the performance. They rather agree with those who say that Peer Gynt is an incredibly rich work of art.
What else do you want to know, Mr. Aslaksen?
Now, Dr. Ibsen, since you are here anyway, there's something I have wondered about for a long time, and that's love. Solveig. You know, she's a teenager when she meets Peer for the first time. And she gets a crush on this maverick. She sees that he runs off with a bride. A sensible girl would just stay away from such a boy. But Solveig gets more interested and leaves her parents to be with him. An outlaw. Is she just a young, naive and stupid girl?
How can I possibly know? Some have said that Solveig is a rebel, like all my female characters. They claim that being a rebel is something inherent in every woman. But this is sheer nonsense, isn't it, Aslaksen? Are you married?
Yes.
Is your wife a rebel?
No. Well, But then Peer leaves her. Waiting for him almost fills her entire life. And when he finally returns, she doesn't say one harsh word. She's not a rebel, but should have been. With due respect, Dr. Ibsen, women like that do not exist. What do you mean by this?
I'll tell you something, young man. I leave behind just one thing. Black marks on sheets of white paper. Nothing else. But I spent all my life carefully turning them into words with sense. If you want to understand them, you'll have to devote your life to it. Ask yourself, not me, what is it supposed to mean? The only thing I can say is that love is not a problem. If it had been, it would have been resolved long ago. Love is a mystery, never to be understood. Love must be lived, and perhaps is just a dream manifested in the dream about Solveig. Who knows? The audience here at Lake Gålå must search their innermost feelings on their way through life and ask, who is Solveig? Where is she in my life?
But Dr. Ibsen, this Peer Gynt that you have created, he's really a ruthless male chauvinist pig.
Is he?
There's a syndrome named after him called the Peer Gynt syndrome. Your poem personifies a type of behaviour that many psychotherapists in the 21st century see in their practice. The male macho conduct. Seduce and leave. They may have sexual triumphs, and then goodbye.
A sad misfortune.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a psychotherapist, reducing a throbbing heart to a diagnosis.
A female Danish theatre director says the same thing, that the scenes with the Bedouin daughter Anitra are among the very best to expose the male chauvinist.
Oh, those virtuous Danes. Tell me one thing, Aslaksen. If Peer and I are such loathsome men, why then are there more than 20 translations of Peer Gynt into English? And what is worse, if 2,000 people rise here at Gålå to celebrate this pig of a man, what does that tell us about them? Do they identify with and therefore celebrate him? Or do they recognize other traits? Perhaps he's a man just as enigmatic in his stupidity and longings as we all are.
No.
When we use our heads to try to understand, we become therapists and social workers. We become more stupid because we have to cut down to size, to simplify, in order to understand. Those who enthusiastically give standing ovations at Gålå may have understood, at the bottom of their hearts, life in all its pulsating complexity. You are a newsman, Aslaksen, and probably see only what is right in front of your nose. And you follow the pack of conventional opinion. You've got to take insults, Aslaksen. I'll tell you something. Do you believe art and politeness go well together? Fire and water, Aslaksen. Fire and water. Is Peer Gynt polite? Is he boring?
Are you saying, Dr. Ibsen, that those who only see Peer Gynt as a prick are lying to themselves, are pretending to be better than they actually are? In a way, they want to rise above Peer and glorify themselves.
Young man, I know nothing about that. But you quoted something a while ago, didn't you? Something about Peer Gynt being a true masterpiece. Who then emerges as Peer Gynt?
But since we have the pleasure of your company here, Dr. Ibsen, you have written about a man who dreams of being an emperor, a ruthless ruler, and he literally stops at nothing to fulfill his dreams.
Do you have dreams, Mr. Aslaksen?
Well, I guess.
I assume the only difference between you and Peer Gynt is that you try to conceal your illusions of grandeur. Perhaps you're ashamed of them. Are you telling me that you don't entertain dreams of how eminent you could have been if only the world had given you the opportunity? Well then, I maintain you're a liar worse than Peer.
I don't know if...
My God, all these noble people who have never had an evil thought, never felt lust, have never lied or spun a yarn, never wanted to crush somebody, never recognized their dreams of splendor, please remove them. They are all like geese, trampling a man to death. Dangerous dreams? I will remind you of my words. Put a bomb under all illusions.
But isn't that exactly what terrorists are doing these days? Are you claiming that Peer Gynt had dreams that could have turned him into a terrorist?
Aslaksen, in your work in this newspaper, Dølen, wasn't it? There is surely somebody who in the depth of his heart would condemn you and call you a terrorist, don't you think?
That's probably making an immensely threatening problem into something less dangerous, Dr. Ibsen. Peer tells us that he's been dealing in weapons. That's one step in that direction. So if you had placed Peer Gynt in today's society, with his dreams of making a fortune on selling weapons and ruling the world, could he have become a terrorist?
I know nothing about that. What I do know is that I feel sorry for anybody who, fearing his own dreams, fails to nourish hopes of something grand. So share with me all your secret dreams, Aslaksen. I think I included in Peer Gynt something like, "Oh rubbish, blood isn't ever that thin." We all know very well that Peer Gynt is our kin. Put your dreams on the table, my good editor, Aslaksen.
I think I'll leave that to the listeners, if they dare. But being a mother, Dr. Ibsen, that's not...
You're not taking that track, Aslaksen. Pretty soon you'll be bringing up that I fathered an illegitimate child when I was 18 and left the mother to fend for herself. Or that Susanna sacrificed everything for me and our son.
I didn't mean to.
Well, it must be Mother Åsa you're bringing up for scrutiny.
Well, traditionally, Åsa's seen as a victim, with a drunk husband and a useless son, whom she still loves. She is evicted from her mortgaged farm, loses everything and dies completely worn out, but still beautifully.
Well, that's the truth then.
But is this because of Peer? This fall might as well be seen as Mother Åsa's own protest. I see a woman who has bottled up her anger throughout an entire act, and runs into Hagstaff Farm in a frenzy of revenge. She would definitely have the strength to take care of the farm on her own.
If that's what you think, well...
She doesn't mend the fence, nor does she do any repair work to the house. She puts the responsibility onto Peer. She is offended and self-centred. If he is weak, she feels shame. If he is strong, she is crushed. What on earth is he supposed to do? How is Peer supposed to be? What does it mean to be yourself?
To be oneself is oneself to slay. I know I wrote it, but it's just nonsense, isn't it?
So Mother Åsa is to blame for everything, then?
Blame? Are you a moralist, Aslaksen? If that's the case, we'll put an end to our conversation right here and now.
I'm sorry, I just meant to...
Hold your tongue and listen. You may well blame Peer for being a male chauvinist, Mother Åsa for being a woman from hell, her father for... and continue going back in time until the fall of man in paradise. Can you see how little of interest there is in that? An indictment of others to exonerate oneself?
But Mother Åsa...
Do you have a difficult relationship with your mother, Aslaksen?
Oh, come on.
Everybody has a problematic relationship with their mother. A mother is both a life-giving bosom and ruler, both the one who loves and the one who rejects. Mother Åsa is no exception. Yes, I have used my own mother as a model, with the necessary exaggeration. What kind of life has your mother lived, Aslaksen? In what way is she still part of your everyday self? Mothers shape our concept of women, our idea of intimacy. If you were to follow Mother Åsa and Peer, what does that tell us about you and your mother? About being a mother? What does it say about yourself?
We were supposed to go for a walk around Lake Gålå to take in the view. I wasn't prepared to expose my own soul for the doctor to see.
But why are you here then, watching a performance of Peer Gynt? If you're not willing to expose your soul, to be touched by your pain and dreams, by your longing for love, even moved by your smallness and greatness, I beg of you, take part in unravelling the drama as you watch it. Open up for whatever is strange and frightening, mortal and immortal, in yourself. I promise you, you'll leave here a much richer man. Then you'll be able, just like Peer, to face your pain. You'll dare to accept the truth about your life. As I wrote in Peer Gynt, no, not this time too, be it ever so straight. The way leads right through. You see, Aslaksen, that kind of courage may change the world. And this short conversation, you've had with yourself, mind you, is what black marks on sheets of white paper want to give rise to.
You have now listened to a conversation between Henrik Ibsen, voiced by Ian Chapman, and editor Aslaksen, voiced by Paul Wilmot. Written and produced by Carl-Henrik Grøndal for the Peer Gynt Festival, and translated by Per Lysvåg. Music by Kjetil Bjerkestrand. Audio engineers were Stig Longnseth and Vegard Moshagen. Welcome to Peer Gynt by Lake Gålåvatnet.